was working as a pediatric physical therapist in a local elementary school when I had cancer 3 times in an 18-month period. And then when I thought I'd finally be moving forward, I found out my doctor had taken his own life. I was devastated, felt a calling to support doctors.
Triggering content warning. This episode discusses mental health and suicide. If you're struggling, please call or text 988 for support.
Welcome to Success Reimagined. I am Dr. Amna Shabir, your host on this journey to thrive at the intersection of ambition and wellness. In every episode, I'll help you challenge outdated definitions of success, discover practical tools and strategies for growth without compromising your well-being. I am so glad you've joined me. Let's reimagine what's possible together. This month, in the spirit of giving, I'll be bringing you impactful stories of how people have turned personal adversity into acts of generosity and service. Today's guest is Kim Downey, founder of Stand Up for Doctors, a movement that spotlights physician well-being, clinician well-being at large, advocacy, and the human side of medicine. Kim is a physical therapist, a 3-time cancer survivor, and a fierce champion for physicians navigating burnout, moral injury. She is also the curator and the lead voice behind White Coats, Courageous Hearts, True Stories of Doctors, a powerful collection of real stories by and for clinicians. And I'm proud to say that I'm one of the contributing authors in the book. In addition, Kim serves as an ambassador for the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation, carrying forward the mission of supporting the mental health and well-being of all healthcare workers. Her work encompasses storytelling, advocacy, connection, and reform, aiming to shift culture in medicine so that physicians are seen, supported, and empowered to heal themselves while caring for others. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Kim, I've just given a few highlights from your journey, from your incredible story and your spirit. Why should we all be intently listening to you and your journey? Take us along.
Well, some people will have heard my story that are listening to this, and some people haven't. So to just say it in a sentence or two, I was working as a pediatric physical therapist in a local elementary school when I had cancer 3 times in an 18-month period. And then when I thought I'd finally be moving forward, I found out my doctor had taken his own life, and I was devastated, and I felt a calling to support doctors. And that's why I'm doing all of this work. And Dr. Kathy Stepien had shared with me in a private LinkedIn message once that everyone wins when physicians are well. So that's become one of my mantras. And also, in addition, what you responded, I think maybe it was in one of my posts, you wrote physician advocacy equals patient advocacy. So I've quoted you many times, all the time. I'm quoting you saying that. And that's because patients need to realize that if their doctors aren't well physically and emotionally, they aren't going to get the best care. So even if it would be self-preservation, that's why patients have to care about the physical and mental well-being of doctors and why we have to make things better for doctors. And you should also be listening closely because that's why patients have long wait times. During my own health issues, one doctor I had to wait to see 4 months. And doctors are leaving clinical practice. They're reducing their hours. They're going non-clinical. So I'm trying to raise awareness of all these things so that patients start to care and speak up as well for doctors.
Yeah, your fierce advocacy definitely shows in your presence everywhere, whether it's in person or online. I so appreciate you sharing about that tough moment. For others who don't know a bit more about that point in time, because you're doing all these wonderful things to change the narrative in healthcare surrounding caring for our doctors. Take us back to that moment where you had just started all doing all of this. Take us back at as we kind of mutually reflect on your why. Why did you start this amazing movement?
So, well, if I go to that day, after the 2 years of constant medical issues, and when I showed up and my radiologist was incredible, and my first Kevin MD article is a tribute to him, and I thought I was going to see him any second. And when I found out he wasn't there and I asked the front desk, and they said he died a month ago. And I actually said, "Are you joking?" Like, I didn't know what else to say because I literally thought I was going to see him any minute. And they said no. And I asked what happened and they said they didn't know. And in that moment, I just knew that he had taken his own life. And I literally went into partial shock. Like, I fell apart. I couldn't stop crying. Couldn't stop shaking. My arms and legs went numb. And I had been concerned about physician well-being because I had been following Kevin MD for the past 6 months. And that's where I first read the statistics about, which are probably outdated, sadly, at least 400 physicians a year taking their own life. And I was thinking, this is horrible. It shouldn't be like that. But I was like, okay, there's a million physicians in America, 400 a year, that's horrible. But what are the chances it would be one of my doctors? Like, I think they're okay. I hope they're okay. So then when it happened, like, sometimes even to this very moment, it feels surreal. Like, that, like, oh my gosh, that actually, did happen to one of my doctors. So I just felt that I had to do something. And as we both know, Dr. Mike, and a couple months later, I had a conversation with him. That was how we met, was me telling him that story because I didn't know how to feel better and move forward. And then he started coaching me, helping me process and accept some things that had happened over those last couple of years. And then he connected me on LinkedIn because I was hoping that I could talk to other doctors who could help me figure out how I could help my own doctors. So in those conversations, I started finding ways to help them, like to amplify their message. Or when I talk to a doctor, I seem to know who they'd want to talk to. So I'd say, "Oh, you should talk to so and so. You should talk to so and so." And that's how we kind of built like this LinkedIn family. And then some of them became friends, or they'll talk to each other while they're driving home from work. And Dr. Charity Hicks would joke that they're Kim approved. Like, if I would give somebody, say, "Oh, you should connect with so and so," that it felt like safe for them to be connected. And it's just kind of grown from there.
I want to take a moment and pause and honor the memory of your incredible physician and how hard it is to actually witness all of this. Not only, I can't even imagine what his family has gone through and what he had to go through to come to that point. But as a patient, we often think that all of this is happening in a silo. Physicians are burnt out, physicians are struggling, it's their problem. They know what they're getting themselves into. This is hard work, right? But then when you share your story, what really strikes me, I have known so many doctors that we have lost to suicide. It is unacceptable. The loss of a single life is unacceptable. But when you talk about the statistics and the numbers, and my personal risk as a woman physician, it's pretty high. When we actually look at what does this translate into, you're a patient going in to see your doctor who has saved your life, who has cared for you, who is wonderful, who's compassionate, and you find this out, and how the ripple of that one act goes and reverberates through the community. And power to you also for using that as a moment to educate, to share, and creating this incredible platform where others can come and just listen. All you have to do is go and listen to the wonderful stories that you have amplified. And you're definitely a super connector. When you talk about LinkedIn, you are a super connector, and in terms of and you are so dedicated in that, reaching out to people, connecting all these beautiful threads, these incredibly powerful, sometimes unwitnessed threads and stories that you bring together on your platform. I also want to give a special shout out to Dr. Kevin Poe, who is the founder of Kevin MD, the platform that has amplified a lot of suffering that has happened in healthcare. And when I say amplified that suffering, this is happening. These are statistics. A lot of times we don't know those statistics. These are facts. And so going into your story and sharing that deeply hurtful part and using that pain and turning that into something so deeply purposeful, I am so grateful for you.
Well, thank you very much. And I almost felt sometimes that the healthcare system should offer some kind of support to patients, right? Because it's just you go there, you find that out, and then there's nothing, right? And it's also a disenfranchised grief, and I wasn't familiar with that term. And because all this happened to me during the pandemic, my husband was never able to go with me to any of my medical appointments, so he never met any of my doctors. And this particular doctor, I went I live in Connecticut, but I went across to New York specifically for the surgeon and then specifically for him because he worked with my surgeon. And so nobody in my life, not one person knew him. So that's why it's called a disenfranchised grief, because normally when you're grieving with friends and family and you've all lost the same person. But for me, there was absolutely no one in my life who had met him. So you could tell them the story. Or if like somebody would say, oh, well, which doctor? And I think they might be expecting you to say your primary care doctor or something. But when you say your radiologist, like a lot of people don't even know the name of their radiologist. So you could kind of see the look on their face and that they almost might not quite get it. Like, well, why are you that upset about your radiologist? Like, if that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. And this is why it is so complicated. You are going through that and you're processing all of that. And you're absolutely right. There needs to be a way that our patients can get support when something like this happens. I mean, we step away and we look at the bottom line is this: our patients deserve better care and our clinicians deserve better care. The entire healthcare team deserves to be seen and witnessed in the suffering that they see and what they have to go through, the mountain that they have to climb every single day. And it's really funny that we forget their humanity. We forget the fact that they have families. I laugh at this a little bit, but when I was expecting my second daughter, I was in clinic and one of my patients realized that I was well into my pregnancy and he said, I never realized that you also have kids and that you're going to have another kid. Like, you're always Dr. Shabir for me. And I found that funny and we laughed about it. But truly, do we look at our physicians as human beings and the fact that they have limited reserves, the fact that they have support, and that it doesn't just apply to physicians, it applies to all members of the healthcare team that are showing up and that are serving.
Right, and that tangentially related to that, when I worked at the school, every so often, if I would see a child out in the community, they would look so shocked and confused, and then later they would say to me that they thought I lived at the school. That was my life, that they didn't realize, right, that I had a life and a family. I'm like, I'm just Miss Kim, right, that's
Yeah,
always in the PT room. So, we're more than that.
absolutely. So, Kim, you started Stand Up for Doctors and you started collecting these amazingly inspiring stories, powerful stories, deeply moving stories. And then you decided to launch White Coats, Courageous Hearts. What were you hoping that this book will achieve?
Well, I'm hoping that it will help doctors and patients, really everyone. So the first endorsement in our book is beautiful, and it's by Dr. Jillian Reigart. And in part of it, she says, that I nearly lost my own life to suicide, and this book would have saved lots of years of suffering and isolation due to guilt and shame, thinking that I was weak, broken, and alone. And so many doctors say, when they were struggling, that they thought they were the only one. Like, I've heard that they're like, I thought it was just me. I thought it was just me. So doctors, when they read this, they'll see pieces of themselves in these stories. And I was actually interviewed for another podcast last night. And the doctor said when she read this, it felt like somebody was giving her a big hug. And she said, or like a pat on the back, that kind of validating all her experiences and saying, yes, you went through this hard time, it's okay. So that's how I really feel that this benefits doctors. And then Pat Dunstan, who was a nurse who became a lawyer and had to leave because of Parkinson's. And I share her quote in here where she says, doctors are expected to be superhuman and not complain because of their salaries. Many people don't have empathy for them because they think a doctor's life would be the ultimate. And meanwhile, doctors are suffering, doctors are struggling, and doctors are human, right? And they have all the same problems that we have. I've talked to doctors who have had a parent who attempted to die by suicide. I've had, doctors whose kids are working on their addiction issues. Like, really, any problem that you have, your doctor might have them too. And we need to see doctors as humans. So I feel like this book humanizes doctors for patients and also for the doctors themselves.
Can absolutely validate that statement. It does do that. And I wish I had this resource when I was earlier in my career and I was just sitting there second guessing myself over and over again. Even yesterday, I was coaching one of my amazing physician clients and we were talking about really basic things and it's a recurring theme where it is so challenging for us to accept our own humanity. And I really feel coming back to the efforts that you're doing, Kim, is that when our patients let us know what we did made a difference, that is the best gift that we ever get. Every card, every note, every letter, every sticky, every word a patient has shared in appreciation has is there with me. It will never leave me. Those points, it's the highlights we remember, right? The horrible things that happen during training or the things that are outside of our control because we're not magicians, we're only clinicians. They stay with you. You remember every call, you remember everything that could go wrong or went wrong or whatever happened, but also you remember the time somebody shows you a little glimmer of kindness. And for me, that is like if what is my wish for non-clinicians, what is my wish for patients, folks outside of healthcare, is if you see, it's just we're lacking in kindness at large in society anyways these days, and to be kind and give each other grace is critical, but especially for your healthcare team, their intention every day is good. Their intention is to help you, to support you. And yes, you deserve better care than the what you're getting. You're absolutely 100% right. As a patient, I can attest to that. Even after having a medical procedure recently, it was not fun, and I thought I'm a doctor, like, this needed to make more sense to me, it didn't. But also realizing that my team was trying my nurses, my entire healthcare team, the physician, the APP, everybody was trying their best with what they had.
And I realize and understand that because going through all of this and 5 surgeries right during the pandemic and everything, and I had all kind of experiences from wonderful to horrible. And looking back, of course, I can say that the poor experiences I had, none of it was intentional, and people were doing the best they could. If you're not well-resourced, sometimes it just doesn't look very good.
Yeah, absolutely. And realizing that it might be overly simplistic when we look at a system issue to just blame a human, instead stepping away and realizing that this is a larger system with many complex pieces, and usually the people that you see on the front lines, they're not the ones in charge. Like, it had come to a point where sometimes I would round and I would say, I'm just a lowly doctor. And because I had to humanize myself, like I wish I could help more. And I know you deserve better. And none of that is a lie. I wish I could. And I know that you do deserve better, but I just can't. And realizing where my hands are tied in terms of moral injury and we're not. So you have interviewed so many humans at this point on your platform. What are some of the things that you've witnessed as like common themes that you can think of or the top of your head that are a recurring pattern? Some of the points we touched on, like I wish that it was just me or I'm alone in my suffering. What are some of the other things you wish that the general public would just know what clinicians are going through that you've heard?
Right. Well, there's so many of them, and a lot of them, such as yourself, do speak about perfectionism. And I guess I wish the people understood that it's baked into you in your training, because some of the things that we talk about, like the average person might be a little confused and thinks, well, if they're doctors, they're really smart. Why are these issues? Like everything from denying your own needs, like when you all are saying, that if you have to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom, or you need to eat and sleep and rest and exercise. And people might be confused because they're like, well, that's what they're telling their patients. Of course they know that. But when you're trained in medical school and then residency, and you're doing 80-hour shifts, and that you're told the patient comes first, and that you don't have time to take care of your own basic needs, that in some ways you almost might forget how, or it almost feels like a cult, or almost like baked into your nervous system to put yourselves last, because all day you put the patients first, but then you have families, you have needy kids, and needy spouse, needy parents. and then you don't have time for yourself. So I hear parts of that all of the time. And the same thing in medicine, that you're not, not to make a mistake, or if you make a mistake, a patient could die. But you're humans, right? And no one in the universe doesn't make mistakes. So to be able to give yourself grace, but that perfectionism, is also baked in, and that causes significant challenges. And then also, if you spoke to, is imposterism, right? And I didn't really, and never heard about imposter syndrome before I got involved in these spaces. But I'd say as a new grad, like I had felt that too, and I didn't have a name for it. So just calling all of those things out, those are some of like the universal things that doctors talk about.
Excellent points. And I can so relate to everything that you said. Kim, we're doing this episode as a special series on the power of giving, and you are giving so much of your time to this platform that you've created. People can access this material at their own time without any monetary investment. So in terms of like the power of giving, how would you define that for yourself at this phase with your advocacy efforts? You're also an ambassador for the Dr. Lorna Breen Harris Foundation and all of this. What does giving look like to you?
If I first think about why I'm doing this too, is because of doctors, and medicine is a life of giving, right? It's a life of service, it's a life of sacrifice for the physicians and for their families. And sometimes doctors just, give and give and give until there isn't anything left for themselves. So if I'm speaking to giving for doctors, like your all are giving so much. And one of the things that doctors also speak to is setting boundaries, and how essential it is to set boundaries. And then patients, as far as giving, that we can give back to doctors. And is what you alluded to, things like just a thank you, or a small token gift, or like a how are you doing, to turn around and to give back to the doctors who give so much to us.
Thank you for sharing that. Kim, how have you reimagined success for yourself, especially as somebody who's right now balancing advocacy, your personal health, as well as your service?
That's an interesting question, because I would say that it's been challenging. Left practicing as a physical therapist amidst my health challenges. And just as sometimes doctors struggle, like I had conversations with like a surgeon who had to leave practice because of like neurological issues, and really went into a place of darkness, because he's like, what am I if I'm not a surgeon? Like that's how he defined himself. And after being a physical therapist for over 30 years, I was like, well, and when I became active on LinkedIn, I'm like, well, what do I put on my tagline? Like, I'm technically a physical therapist, my license is current, but I'm not practicing as a physical therapist. Am I a physical therapist? Like things like that came up. So then, since I was advocating for doctors, I put, well, PT and fierce advocate for physician well being. But then someone who's close to me, and they were just looking at my best interest, said, well, you can't put that, like that I don't have credentials. But then when I talked to Dr. Michael Hirsch, my physician coach, and he's like, well, who says you're not a fierce advocate for physician well-being? And now some would say I'm, like a very good fierce advocate for physician well-being, right? And then that's one of the reasons I was happy to get involved with Medicine Forward, and I became an ambassador for them. So then I was like, oh, finally, like I felt like something that I can add to that tagline. I'm an ambassador for community ambassador for Medicine Forward. On the flip side of that is, you would all say, if there's a time where you're not practicing medicine, it's not that you're nothing, right? You're still a mom, a sister, a wife, a daughter, all of those things, and that is enough, that we should never be solely reliant on our title. So I've come to learn that. But so, and then now I'm also, as you said, ambassador for Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation and Clinician Burnout Foundation, and an author, a speaker, a podcast host. So now I have many more things that I can add to that tagline. But I call myself, an accidental entrepreneur, because I didn't plan on doing any of this. And so my mission statement is to build connection and create advocacy for healthy doctors. And I'm still finding my way. But as Dr. Michael Hirsch has said, like, you don't have to know the whole path. You just have to take the next right step. So maybe it's not well defined, but maybe it's okay to share that too, that I don't have all the answers or necessarily know where this is all gonna lead eventually.
Authenticity is extremely welcome on this platform, and I see you share that. See how purpose, when it's truly aligned with your values and your purpose, your mission, it just takes you to places, right? And so thank you for all that you do. What is one thing our listeners can do, or many things, to support Stand Up for Doctors and contribute to the advocacy work that you're doing?
Thanks for asking. So for now, I would love it if people would subscribe to my YouTube channel because they're really wonderful episodes featuring mostly physicians, but also others who intersect with healthcare, and they're really valuable conversations. And they're just now being uploaded on Spotify. So it is Stand Up for Doctors on YouTube or on Spotify. There's about 70 uploaded at the moment. Or I have a monthly Substack that you can also subscribe to, and that's where I kind of summarize my month of physician advocacy efforts. So I update that every month, and I also list all of the YouTube channel episodes for that month, or if I've done any in-person meetups, or if any book signings are coming up, all of that. So people have told me it's kind of fun and exciting to, read that each month and see what's going on. And also one big thing is if you'd like to go to my website, which is standupfordoctors.org, at the top, there's a button where you can find out information. I'm planning a physician retreat, the first ever, at the Edith Macy Conference Center in Briarcliff Manor, New York, next October of 2026, the 9th to the 12th. And it's going to be a wonderful time for a weekend for doctors to connect, empower, recharge, and celebrate. And if you're a physician, we would really love to see you there.
Thank you so much for sharing that and for the wonderful work that you do, Kim.
You're welcome, and thank you, Amna, for all that you do as well, right? For patients and for colleagues and for everyone in this space. You're a very valuable voice.
The stories we tell and the ones we choose to stand up for can be the greatest gift of all. Kim's work reminds us that giving isn't only about resources, it's also about voice, courage, and advocacy. As you reflect on this conversation, I hope you'll consider how you can give back to the healthcare workers who give so much of themselves every day. You might believe you don't have the time or energy to focus on yourself, but this is exactly the right time to get serious about your well-being. You don't have to do it all alone. I'm here to help. If you enjoyed this video and are ready to take the next step, head over to dramneshabir.com where you'll find free resources you can access right away. The website link is below. Let's get started on your path to thriving.